If you're on YouTube right now, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes. And drop a like and a comment. Thank you. Okay, today we're here with Miss Erin Stokes with CASA of Northeast Louisiana. And today we're going to talk about child advocacy.
That's right. Hi, Brian. How are you?
I'm fantastic. So thanks for coming in. And it's a little bit of a reversal this time. Last time we met, you were doing a little bit of interviewing of me.
I did.
And for some material you're going to put out for CASA. So today, let's talk about CASA and what CASA is. Just full disclosure, I'm a CASA advocate, and I've been with CASA for about 2 years, and it has been the most rewarding volunteer work I have ever been a part of.
I love to hear
when
that.
You can, you've heard before that the children are our future, but when you get to actually see the least of these and you get an opportunity to advocate for their future, it changes the whole dynamic. I don't know if you have kids or not, but I have kids and I've been around youth. And as a parent, we want the best for our kids. And we don't think of too many times that in our own community, we have kids that struggle with a lot. We have parents that struggle with a lot. And to see that we now have an organization that can help advocate on behalf of the kids to get the kids the best advantage at life we possibly can give them, it's been so rewarding for me.
I love hearing that. And, we hear that from a lot of our volunteers. Pretty much any volunteer that I talk to, once you get into it, you realize that it's challenging work, but, man, you're really making a difference. So I'm so glad it's been that for you, too.
In real estate or marketing or sales, you talk about the ROI of something. Well, I can't think of a better return on investment of someone's time for just the lifelong impact you can make in a child's life. So for the people out there that fully don't understand what CASA is, why don't you give us a brief overview of what CASA is and what CASA Advocate does for the community and for the kids?
Sure, I would love to do that. And I really would love to do that starting back with the history of CASA, why it even exists.
Absolutely.
And I love the story of that. So this is in Seattle, Washington in the 70s. There was a judge who was presiding over a lot of cases where there were foster children coming in, and the judge was having to decide, where is this child going to be permanently placed? And this particular judge was not feeling congruent when he left the courtroom. He was making his best educated decision, but feeling like he was missing information. And he didn't like that. So on his own, he asked to train community volunteers to serve as advocates in his courtroom. He swore them in and asked them to follow along on the foster care journey of this child and to report back to him what they were seeing from their own perspective, because he wanted the perspective of a child, but through the voice of an adult. And so he created court-appointed special advocates, which is what CASA stands for, in the 70s. And it became just a great success in that community. And then over time, just kind of trickled throughout the nation as more communities realized, there is a gap in the system where if we can just get the information to a judge, we are changing legacies of families, making the best decisions for them. So that's how CASA came to exist. It came to Northeast Louisiana in 1999. The Junior League of Monroe is actually who started the CASA program here. And so since 1999, CASA has been steadily growing and serving more and more children. And then now here we are.
So, and the history of it, I'm still probably don't know near as much as what you do, but it's the court system that's actually involved that's kind of heading this up, correct? That oversees kind of what the advocates do. Am I misstating to say that this has some Supreme Court backing in the court system?
It does, yes. And I mean, it's localized, obviously, through the state. But, yes, it's very much supported in that way. And
over the years, the systems have been developed that gives us as advocates a roadmap to be able to follow on how to effectively advocate. A quick experience on a high-level view, I've heard of, we hear the term CPS, Child Protective Services.
Right.
What's it called here locally? It's
DCFS.
DCFS.
Mm-hmm. Department of Children and Family Services, right.
I was under the impression, so I knew that we had that system. I knew that we had foster families that would come into play. And then I knew that there's just always misconception about what a foster family is. You know, you hear the thing, oh, they're just trying to stack up as many kids as they can to make income. Well, if somebody is trying to make a living off foster kids, there are better ways of making money because
Right.
the foster parents that they get some resources,
Sure.
but the resources they get is not what you would typically expect. And I think our system is lacking a little in that area. We've got some great organizations. I know First West is one of those organizations. First Baptist of North Monroe
Yes.
is part of those, where they have support services for foster families to help support them where the funds may fall short in other areas. But going through this process, I was I was taken aback by the overwhelming need in the foster care space. Not enough homes
Not enough at all. Right.
for the amount of kids that we have. The courts are so overloaded with these cases. DCFS is overloaded. There's a revolving door at DCFS for various reasons, and I think that there's some good strides that are being made to kind of shut that revolving door a little bit to make it easier on the caseworkers. But the caseworkers are so overloaded to where they have basically checklists that they go through, and they can't. It's not that they do advocate for the kids, but not on the level of what a CASA can. And then I was taken aback by the foster parents that are with these kids having a home. They don't have any advocacy capability within the court system to be able to advocate what's best for the kid. Now, I know a lot of these foster families, some of them are trying to adopt
Sure.
kids. Some of them just want to help kids in that time of need. So when it came time for me to understand what advocacy looks like, I just was so naive to the fact that these kids without a CASA, they literally have no voice. An older kid can definitely be able to speak to what they want in life, but when you've got that 5-year-old, that infant, or even that elementary school kid, they may know what they want, what they feel, but that's not always the best choice for what they want. And having an advocate has just it's really opened my eyes to
Yeah.
the desperate need we have in our community, but the value we can bring to our community as well.
I think you touched on so much of it, and it's because you are a CASA, so you've seen it. And I do think that you use the word naive, and I mean that in the most gentle way. I think
Sure.
when we say that about our community, if you only know what you know, and so until you've touched it and seen it, like you don't fully understand the way the system works, how overrun it is, and what that does. We have great-hearted people trying to do the best they can in social work and foster care, and all the systems that are in place are to be celebrated because they're doing what
Sure.
they can. But to give people a glimpse, let's say Northeast Louisiana is what CASA serves. That's 11 parishes. In that 11 parishes, there are right now about 420 children in foster care. 300 of those are in Ouachita Parish.
Mm.
So Ouachita Parish has a really bad reputation, unfortunately, across the state for child abuse and neglect. It's not the worst, but it's not doing great. And then our state, unfortunately, is ranked pretty high in child abuse and neglect. So when it's like trying to, pour mud through a funnel.
Sure.
I mean, it's just consistently building and building, and people are doing what they can. But like you said, it's a checklist because they have to get to everybody.
Yeah.
And so when a child has important information or an opinion, or like you said, feelings, or maybe something that's not being done for them that they need and should be done, there's sometimes just no time, no resources, and it's not the failure of anybody. It's
Yeah.
just there are too many.
Just the system's overwhelmed.
It's completely overwhelmed.
Well,
And I will tell you, though, when you talk about that, I think it's important for people to know that CASA serves about 180 children right now. We have about 100 that judges are saying, we would love a CASA on this case. And that case is actively rolling,
Sure.
whether or not we're there. But we need volunteers to fill in that gap. So we have about 100 more kids that are just waiting.
So when we look at CASA, you just touched on it, that we have a lot of great organizations that work in this space. What do you think separates CASA over all of these other entities that are out there in this space to assist with you. And they're not trying to take anything away from those entities, but what separates CASA?
It really comes down to the volunteer. And a lot of these organizations, you look and you see like that's their job and they're doing the best they can at their job, but your heart's not always at your job. But when you are a volunteer with a CASA, as a CASA, you've chosen to give that part of yourself and part of your life. And we see that our volunteers have a different level of passion for speaking up for these children, for getting in there and becoming the eyes and ears for the court system. Like our volunteers are what make it different. They do it on their own time, with the support of our program, with an advocate supervisor, with people walking alongside them. But honestly, a volunteer.
Let's touch on that a little bit. So as a CASA volunteer, are you just kind of thrown out in the space? Mm-hmm. What does CASA do to help support the volunteer?
Sure. Let's start there. Okay. So court-appointed special advocates, we've said that. So what happens is if someone hears this or sees a billboard and they're like, that sounds important, well, they have a process to go through because this is a serious subject matter. And so this isn't like showing up to, serve soup at the soup kitchen. Right. You have to be trained. And so when you want to become a CASA, there's an application process. Then there's an interview, and that interview is more for us to understand you. As a volunteer, what would fit? Do we fit? Do we fit together? Because we know that you're about to embark on something that's deeply personal for you and for this family and for this child. So we want to make sure it's a good fit. So there's application and interview, and then there's even training. And our staff trains our volunteers to be able to feel empowered when they start. And it's not long. It ends up being about 2 days worth of training and not all day. And we kind of do it now on your own accord. You can read a lot of materials, but there is a lot of in-person training, a portion of it, because we do want someone who is new to feel really empowered and to know and be confident they can walk into that courtroom or into a family visit and ask the right questions.
Right.
But you are not alone even then. Our staff, they're called advocate supervisors, and you're assigned one of those to assign the case to you, be there for any questions, go with you to court if that's what you want, go with you to a family visit. That's your person to kind of walk through the system with you, because most of our volunteers do not have social work backgrounds, right, law degrees. Like you would think, like, this sounds like I need to have some kind of background in social services before I can do it. And that's just not the case. Most of our volunteers have no background in that whatsoever.
Yeah, and I'll say that the level of support a volunteer gets. Now, I've had the same CASA supervisor for the past 2 years, and the level of the confidence they give you to walk alongside you through this process. You are not out there on an island by yourself. The training is very thorough when they go through it, and then your supervisor is basically there to hold your hand as much as you need them to. Now, it's going to be more effective if you're able to do some of the stuff on your own. You're a force multiplier at that point. Mm-hmm. But to know that you have the support, that's right. It's the only way I would have been able to feel confident doing it. I'm pretty confident in a lot of things in life. I did not realize, though, how emotional this process can be. Mm-hmm. And to be able to have that supervisor to help kind of guide your path through it so that you don't get consumed emotionally involved in it. They kind of help you steer that course. So I think that part that you guys are winning at a very high level with that.
Well, that is good to hear. I mean, especially just firsthand experience that you felt supported. And I mean, you're on your second case, I believe.
Yeah, we just finished. So the first case, when we started, my wife and I were a team, and we went out to do one case. It was all of the same rough family unit. We finished the first case, and there was a need for us to get involved in 2 other siblings. So they assigned us to that. So we have finished 2 cases. Now, we've decided, because the need is so great, that my wife and I were going to split up. So she just got assigned a new case recently. We're still trying to find my next case. But it's rewarding. It's emotional but rewarding. We'll jump into that in a minute.
Okay.
Why don't we talk about just the power of the volunteer and volunteering within CASA. CASA couldn't be what it is today without the volunteers.
No, exactly. I mean, it's everything we do surrounds our volunteers because they're doing the legwork. And what does that look like? I think a lot of people have that question. I recently when I was interviewing you, I interviewed another volunteer, Diane Lyons, and she said, when you come from privileged places, sometimes you forget to look down. And that's where the children are. They're just right there. And so our volunteers, the power that they have is in going into a room full of adults who have very big adult conversations to have that have lifelong impacts about everybody in that room, including the child.
Yeah.
And being the one person, the volunteer that can go down and get eye to eye level with that child and say, I'm here to listen to you. And the lasting impact of that moment for a child to feel like in a room where they can barely understand what's going on, that there's one person saying, can you tell me what your experience is here? And just consistently showing up as that person. The transformational power of a child who's going through something so traumatic to believe and to be witness to that there is one person that is dedicated to saying what you have to say matters to me.
Absolutely.
Man.
Well, that's part of the little part of the training that they really impressed upon the volunteers is that I know one of our cases we went through maybe 4 different caseworkers in that one case. So the child was seeing just a rotation of people within DCFS coming in to make things happen. I don't know if it's if their attorney gets if there's a rollover for that, but I know with the caseworker there's so much of a rollover that they impress upon us that you're the one constant that's in that child's life going through all of this. So the commitment was a little intimidating at first for me of knowing that an average case could take up to 18 months to see. And I know there's some that's gone longer than that. Right. But being a commitment to be that one person that's going to see it from start to finish, to give that kid a little bit of confidence and the way they're going through life, that they have somebody they can talk to and that can, kind of explain things that need to be explained to them.
Yes, explain things to them, ask the questions, and then ask the questions that they don't even know to ask. I think being a parent does change the way that you are a CASA volunteer. If you come in as a parent, you do realize, like, what would I want someone to ask about my child if they're in this situation? And that includes, like, following up with a school. Like, how are they doing at school? Is anybody asking how they're doing at school? And the foster family, I'm sure, is involved, but like you said, they're extremely limited. Their hands are tied in a lot of ways when they're the foster parent.
And that caught me probably off guard the most, that I would have just assumed that they would be able to tell the court kind of what's going on. Now, the foster parent has a voice to be able to tell DCFS things going on, and that gets included in the report. But the only person that can really, truly advocate is going to be a CASA. The kids are assigned an attorney, but that attorney has got a caseload that is so big and wide that they don't get to know these kids on a personal level. Right. I wouldn't think most of them do. The cases that we were involved in, they definitely didn't get to know them at a personal level. They were up to speed with reading all the documents provided to them, but they don't know the individual. They know what they see on a piece of paper.
Right. And of course, our CASA volunteers are super important in the courtroom. But even more than that, when you think about, if let's say a year to 18 months is an average case time, a child's life doesn't pause for 18 months. So if they have been removed from foster care, like if someone doesn't understand that system, like if they've been removed due to child abuse or neglect, that child's whole world just shifted overnight. They take a few belongings to a new home. If it's a family placement, great, but it's still a different home. It could be a different school, a different church. They just lost access to any of their extracurricular activities that they were engaged in. So their entire life just turned upside down.
Their friend group that they had wherever they were at.
And I have 3 kids, and I think about what a whirlwind that would be for them emotionally and physically to say, everything's different starting Monday. And to know that, like, yes, the adults in the room have to figure out what's safe and permanent for this child. But in the meantime, this child's growing up. And one of the things that a CASA can do is to keep check of a pulse of that child and say, has anybody asked if this child needs glasses?
Right.
You know, the teacher's mentioning this. There's so much going on that a CASA volunteer does all of those things too.
Right.
To say, has anybody asked, does this child want to play soccer this year? They played soccer at their other school. Is there a way we can do that? It's just so much more than even that one court date that you get once a month or every few months where you get to say what you think is best for this child. It's so much more than that. But at the same time, it doesn't engulf your entire life.
Right.
It's a few check-ins here and there, but the power that has, those few emails, exactly,
it is huge. Can you kind of give us we kind of glossed over a little bit of the training. Can you give us a few more specifics of what someone could expect in the training to become a CASA?
Well, a lot of it is similar. Now, I went through the training about 15 years ago, so I've been a CASA for a long time, but a lot of the training is similar to what foster parents would go through. So you have to understand the entire system. I think the educational component is understanding the system, understanding how to remove your notion of what a family should look like.
Yeah, and that was eye-opening for me.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a background where stable background, both parents, they're still married today. They both worked. I feel like I grew up in a middle class, maybe even considered an upper middle class family. And what I had to learn in that training is that not everybody's going to live like you.
Right.
Which with my profession, I get to see that firsthand. Not everybody lives like you live. But to walk in the house, your level of clean, my level of clean, we have to set some of that stuff to the side to understand what is considered basic necessities that a kid needs. And I think the training did a really good job of setting expectation of what you may walk into, but what lens you need to look at it through. If you look at through the lens of how you're living your day-to-day life, you're going to be for a little bit of a rude awakening because
Sure.
it's not like that for every kid. And the kids are not at fault for any of this. I mean, they're the innocent bystanders with how the adults are behaving at that time. And I've got to see the love of a mother that is so ridden by addiction that demon has such a hold on her. And I know that she wants her kids, and I know that she wants them back. I've never had to deal with addiction myself, but going through the training, them kind of walking you through steps of what that really looks like, it was really eye-opening for me.
I think the training is super impactful in that way, especially if I forget, I've worked with CASA for so long that I know the reality of child abuse and neglect and what our families are going through, that I forget if you live in this other world where that's not something you've heard about, you probably would bring all your biases in and want a child to have, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms with a white picket fence and a puppy.
Yeah.
And that's just not the reality of what is actually safe and the best permanent solution for them, because we love families to stay together.
Absolutely. And, for the kids' standpoint, they don't recognize the life that they're being raised in is anything wrong with it.
Right.
You could look at the most deplorable situation that you would like, there's no way. There's no way. But that kid still wants to go be home with mama.
Of course.
They always, no matter the circumstance, I'm sure there's circumstances where kid doesn't, but I know in many cases the kid just wants to go back and be with mom. And it's hard for us as a society of knowing what we know and how we live in the circle that we walk in, that how could the kid want that? But I mean, it's the love of a mom. The kid knows no different at that point.
I think on the flip side of that, though, too, Brian, is that's an important part for a CASA too, because if you ask that child where they want to be with mama.
Yeah.
And a CASA's role gets you have to be deeply empathetic to the idea that yes, you do, and then also be very brave for that child to say, is that the best placement for you?
Right.
And now look, I think it's important too for anyone that's listening to know, like, a CASA is not the end all be all in a courtroom.
That is correct.
So you are one of many voices.
Many, that's correct.
And so don't feel the burden of, I'm deciding you're not.
Well, that was probably one of the first things that my CASA supervisor helped me to understand, is that we're not running in like Superman or Superwoman going to save the day for a kid. We're here to be fact-finding. And to give recommendations at that point. We're not decision makers through any of this process.
Exactly.
We want to be an advocate, and there's ways that we can advocate for the parents as well. Parents have a case plan they have to work, and we can be encouragers for them because we know that's where the child wants to go, and we want the child to go back to you if you're willing to walk through these steps. And we can help advocate and encourage the parents as well, because ultimately that's what needs to happen. Is we want to reunify the family. I know that there's a lot of families that turn to foster care because they don't have, they want to adopt, whether it's they want to help kids or they want to grow their family. But the ultimate goal is family reunification. And that's not always the case. It can happen. But when it does happen, and we had one of our cases where family reunification happened, and it was just a blessing to be able to see that.
Sure.
Are there any scenarios that you can share with us, some success stories that, or some wins or outside of the box things that you've seen happen in some CASA cases?
Outside of the box, I'm not, there's so many good stories with our CASAs. I know we had one recently, and I won't share her name, but she had been advocating with this case for a little bit over a year, and it was not going exactly how she thought it should go, but she had done her job as a CASA volunteer, and the court system was just kind of rolling along like it was going to roll, and she saw the outcome was going to be one way, and she was just doing her job and saying, I'm going to show up, and I'm going to send my court report in, and I'm going to be there for this child. And at the last minute, the last court hearing, which was going to be a TPR, termination of parental rights,
Right.
The judge wanted to hear from her, and it changed everything. And it was one of those stories where, the staff all gets together like, this was incredible, because it's not about being the loudest or the, this big booming voice in the courtroom. You need to hear what I say. It's about consistently showing up, gathering the information, and then when the moment comes, if that information is going to matter, it's going to really matter. And it did. And she was so celebratory in knowing that her faithful walk along this child for that long had kind of changed the story.
Let's talk a little bit about preventing child abuse in Northeast Louisiana. Are there any statistics that you have about, what that looks like in our community? Or just basic overall
Sure.
view?
Well, our community, like I said, I love Northeast Louisiana. I have been here for about 20 years, and so I always want good things for our community. I think that anytime that you see our numbers, it's not encouraging as far as child abuse and neglect goes. But another way to look at that is to say, okay, if Ouachita Parish isn't doing great with child abuse and neglect, it's also because it's being reported, which is good. So there may be other places that are doing worse, but it's just in secret. So I do applaud our community in that we are speaking up and saying that, these children are being mistreated, and let's get them into the system and find a safe and permanent home. But child abuse is pretty rampant in Louisiana as a whole. It's 48th. It's ranked 48th in the nation right now, at 50th being the worst in child abuse and neglect. I was for a while trained in a program called Darkness to Light, which was an educational component to train teachers, nurses, doctors, those kinds of things to look out for child abuse and what does that look like. And our statistics at that time, it's been a few years, but it was 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys will be abused in this state before they turn 18. And that's physical and sexual abuse. And so when you think about how many children you know and what that looks like, that's a staggering number. I think it also means that we have to be on the lookout. We don't always have to mind our business, like as a teacher or a nurse or a Sunday school teacher or someone. Like if you notice something about a child that seems off, it's probably not just you being paranoid,
Right.
Because the numbers are real. And yes, poverty does play a part. Like we know that poverty historically plays a part in abuse because the stress on a family. Legacies, abuse follows through legacy in a family because what was okay then is okay now, that sort of thing.
And that's, during the training, that's one of the things that they talk about is how do we stop the cycle of it? When you talk to just the biological parents that have been involved in our cases, and when you start asking questions about how you were raised and, the family members, can a family member step in and help out right now? that cycle of abuse, that cycle of neglect, it just didn't, most of the time, it didn't start with this one family. It's the mom or the dad, and then the grandma and the grandpa. I mean, all of them went through, many of them went through the same process as they were growing up. And it's sometimes even though we should know right from wrong, but if you grow up in an environment to where that's how you were treated when you did something bad, then you think that that's acceptable. Well, it worked for my household growing up. Why don't I just continue the
Right.
process? And that's just not, it's not the case. You have to break that cycle.
Well,
Uh,
and I speaking of breaking the cycle, like that's one of the statistics that I'm so proud of for CASA is that when a CASA is involved in a foster child's case, they are 50% less likely to ever be in the foster care system again.
wow.
And so one of the problems that we see in legacy abuse is that they may have been in foster care themselves, bounced around from home to home, been back with parents sometimes, grandma, sometimes foster parent, or aged out of the system with no parent whatsoever. And that just,
And that's scary too.
yes. And so when you can get a CASA involved and know that because this child is now going to have a permanent placement, and they're so much less likely to re-enter the system because there's been due diligence done to find a good placement, it's going to start breaking the cycle. Like that child doesn't need to bounce around because they're just going to pass that on to their children. So let's break the cycle and get them the safe, permanent, loving home that we can get them at whatever age it ends up being. That's
Right.
how you begin to break that cycle for our community.
When we're talking about commitment from a volunteer, can you give us an overview of what that monthly commitment would look like?
Well, I mean, Brian, you could probably tell them what that monthly commitment looks like for you. I mean, I can tell them what we generalize, but I
Tell me
would,
generalize, and then I'll kind of go
okay.
into what it's looked like for me.
Sure. Like it's usually, we say between 4 to 8 hours a month is pretty much what we ask of our volunteers. We do ask that you see your child every month. And then in addition to that, there's probably a court hearing. And then it's all the follow up. It's the checking in, it's the emails, it's a phone call here and there. But that's the entire month, around 4 to 8 hours. Is what we tell people to expect. But then also, like, it's about a year commitment is what we
Yeah.
also ask.
And I think it's important for people to understand that commitment needs to be real. This is not, although going and packing bags at the food bank is necessary, and we still need people to do that. Going and serving our life group at church, we do the Simple Project about once a quarter, and serving the hungry. We don't call them the homeless because not everybody's homeless, but we serve hungry people. All those are still vital volunteer opportunities. But the time commitment with CASA, I was concerned about when we first got started. So, how do you mind me sharing the story of how I got involved with
I would
CASA?
love for you to.
Our church made a commitment to start spending more energy on the least of these. As a believer, Christ says that we need to take care of the widows and the orphans. And I think many communities do a fantastic job with their deacons of taking care of the orphans, making sure they're taken care of. But I don't think we have fully, as a community of believers, really stepped up to the plate to take care of the orphans. And you could say, well, they're not an orphan, not orphans. These are kids that are in need. I'm rolling them all up in that one category. So we have a lady, personal friend of ours, that's been a foster parent for many, many years in different states as they moved around, and has a passion for it. And her and another gentleman, which was teaching our life group at that time, he worked for the Center Children and Family, and thought it'd be a great idea to have just an exploratory meeting with CASA at our church. So our life group, our Sunday school class, decided we're going to take time out of respect for them because they're asking us to, just to sit down and listen to what it has to offer. And I tell you, when we went for that introductory meeting, it just pricked my heart so bad and they didn't try to put a guilt trip on anybody, just kind of laid out facts. Here's what we have, but here's what you can do to help make a difference. And I think back a lot of times to Jesus talking about he was willing to leave the flock to just go get that one. And if I could be, or my wife and I could be, or other members could be that one to go save that one, it's worth it. So we went to that introductory meeting, and a big group of us decided that we're going to take to the next step and go through training. We're not going to make commitments to do it, but we went to the training. And the people at the training, we had medical professionals. My wife and I, we sell real estate. We had a lot of busy people that came to that class, but we heard how great the need was. We're like, we have to do something. I mean, if we say that we're this and we're not willing to step up to the plate, and that was a personal conviction. I'm not trying to put a guilt trip on anybody, but personal conviction. I'm like, well, I don't have time for this. I've got young kids at home. They're busy, but the need is so great for what is out there. So we decided to make the commitment that we're going to go ahead and do it, and be transparent with you. I was scared. I was scared I was going to screw something up, that I was not going to be on top of my paperwork like I should. I'm going to let my biases affect the way that I advocate. And all of that was real for me. But when we got assigned our case and our supervisor sat down with us and started showing us, look, it's not this whole elephant. It's just a bite-sized piece we're going to take each step of the way, and made us feel so comfortable that she started off holding our hands, and then we're like, we got this. We'll call you and give you updates if we need something, but we have this. So for us, when I say us, it was me and my wife on the first one together. There was things that we did separate. There's things that we did together, just because of the uncertainty. You know, there's part of towns that even to this day, people, they don't live like you. They don't speak like you. They don't walk in your same circles. Like, I'm just a little uncomfortable. But they gave us the tools that we needed to be able to go out. And when I learned that we're not decision makers, we're just reporting. We're reporting the fact. We're fact finding. We're encouragers also within the process. And then to take it a step further and go sit down and talk with the kids' teachers, and for them to be able to light up and say they have somebody that's fighting for them. The teachers were able to give us great information that we're able to use to be able to get additional resources for the kids, because there are a ton of resources that the state provides for the kids and for the parents themselves. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk about trying to reunify the family. The parents, biological parents, in order to be able to get their kids back, they have a case plan that they have to work, and it's very clear on the items that they have to achieve, whether it be drug tests, whether it be going to parenting classes, because we don't want that cycle to be repeated again. And to see that process work. But when you're trying to put your words for what you feel in a report, almost seems a little inadequate. But when it came time for us to testify or to go to court, every time we went to court, you know, it wasn't that the judge asked something for CASA, but CASA's report was read every single time the judge asked a question. And in many cases, I was asked to speak. And to be able to see a shift that happened, because I was able to give the judge real world information as an active community member, to be able to share with that judge what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing. And then when the judge asked for the opinion, and then why for that opinion, I felt you could, it wasn't a feeling, you could see the reaction that the judge gave as, you know what, all of this is making sense with what this CASA is giving me for the context of everything. These attorneys, they may, if the child's old enough, talk to the child, but they're not building that relationship. They have a caseload that's this big. But that was probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever seen, when our voice as a community member was able to shift what was not going anywhere to where the judge felt like he had clarity to be able to make a decision. And it gave me peace knowing that the result of this is not on me. It's the court system is going to make the determination. Mm-hmm. But we added so much to that child's life by being able to give that judge context for the decision they were going to make.
I love hearing you talk about it. You're so eloquent about it. And you and I have had a couple conversations about you as a volunteer, but that's exactly what I mean when you ask what makes CASA different. I'm like, well, it's the people. It's people like you, Brian, that choose to volunteer because something just doesn't add up. You're like, well, all these kids need help and no one is speaking up for them. I could do that. And then once you're in it, to see the impact that you make, I mean, our volunteers are what make this feel different in that courtroom. And You just expressed it. The judges in our local communities respect our CASA volunteers very much. You have to think about how hard their job is to come in and just get all the biased opinions. I mean, everybody else in that room pretty much has a goal in mind that they want
They
to
all
achieve.
have an agenda.
And you don't. Your only agenda is to get the facts out there and then use that to help them put the puzzle together. I could imagine the relief I would feel as a judge trying to make that decision to know like these are just facts. There's no agenda behind this, and this person has walked alongside this court case just like everybody else and asked all the questions, and it's just given me their opinion. Man, it's relief for me, and I cannot imagine what that judge would feel like in that moment. So we love our volunteers because they are that in this community, and they're so respected.
You know, the time commitment was in the very beginning was, back up a little bit. I've never had a problem writing a check, and I'm not someone that's got massive means, but if there was a need and we had the extra, never had a problem writing a check for it. But have always been so stingy with my time. It's that, you know, the world we live in is just go, go, go. And when it gets time for a break, you don't want to put something else on your plate. But the time commitment to this, I think you kind of nailed it on the, 4 to 8 hours a month. When you're preparing your court report, maybe a little bit more than that. But if you're smart with planning your schedule, there's more than enough time. There's things that could be done on a lunch break. A lot of times it's telephone calls trying to connect to see if there's other family members that have a say in what's happening or can give you some additional information. There's monthly visits that you can go to where everybody's there together, where you can see the foster parent have a conversation, you can see the child interact with the biological parent, and then you have time and you can talk to the biological parent during that time. So there's a lot of things that can be done to conserve some time when it needs to be conserved, as long as you're going out and fully 360-degree look at what's happening in that child's life. The time commitment is not that bad. But the reward for that little bit of time is so huge. It's huge and impactful in your personal life because you're a difference maker in the community. But even bigger than that, the path that you can set this child on, because if it's reunification and this parent has walked through everything, going through their working the program and they're clean of drugs, they've been through some parenting classes, and they're finding new ways. We don't have to spank the kid or beat the kid to get them to do what we need to do. There's some training to help them on how to parent, and to be able to see that transformation happen from the time you started to the end is very, very rewarding. Now, everything doesn't go like you want it to. Sure. Anytime you're working with a government, things don't always happen fast. Well, I've never seen anything happen fast working with the government. They're inundated with so many problems that many communities have. But if you're willing to adjust your patience a little bit in that area, the outcome, I think you'll be pleased with.
I think that's a good reminder to someone who wants to become a CASA is you don't get to set the pace, but you do get to walk alongside. And so that's part of the training that we put you through is, one, lay down your biases, and two, like settle in to just be a part of it and walk at the pace that the court system has set for this child, because you could run yourself ragged trying to push everybody faster, and it's not going to do any good.
It's not going to do any good.
It's not going to do any good. So,
especially in that court case, they're not seeing the kids every 3 to 6 months. So there's a big span in between it. But it's important for me to really impress upon people, you're not in this alone. You have the support of the whole CASA team that's behind you to guide you through it. You don't have to feel like, am I making a bad decision by saying this? Get your supervisor on the phone or have that face-to-face meeting and say, look, here's some things that I'm having that I'm dealing with that I'm frustrated about, or people are not understanding what's happening. And for me, it's like I'm that fix-it guy. I want things fixed. I want to do the right thing all the time. I want to do it right, what's best for the child. But time has to take its course. They have to go through these steps. And even when you see that biological parent doesn't seem to be going through the steps, but that one thing that was said that shifted their mindset, it's like, this is real, I better get serious. And you start seeing them taken these steps to be able to get their child back, that's rewarding in itself too.
It is a rewarding program, and it is different than any other volunteerism that I've been a part of. And I would just encourage anyone that thinks, well, that sounds like something nice to do sometime. Like, we need you right now.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted to be with you today, is just to remind the community that we love Northeast Louisiana. We really do. And to make it like that slow change, man, you want to fix things. I know there are people out there wanting to fix every single problem that we have in our community. And the thing is, like, we've got to let time do its thing and let us do our part. And this is a way that you can do that.
Absolutely.
Like, you can start changing it at the base layer. Like, get into the families. Let's change our culture through the family system. Let's support families that need support. Let's advocate for our children. And over time, if we all can do that together, our community looks different.
Sure it does. And not to say that there's not a lot of small wins through the process. One of our kids just needed some extra time taking a test, and we were able to get that extra, I forget the term, IEP in for the child. One kid needed hearing aids, and we knew that they had some hearing problem in the family. But to change that child's speech and to change the trajectory of their life, just by being able to advocate for hearing aids, I mean, we changed that kid's life at that point.
Absolutely.
And probably needed hearing aids much earlier than when he was able to get them. So there are gratifications along the way that you can achieve, but it is a process. But the end result is so stinking worth it. So worth it.
I'm so glad that that's been your experience. And anyone that wants to become a CASA volunteer, we are trying to offer at least 2 training classes every month for Ouachita Parish. Now, we are in 11 parishes, so if somebody hears this and they're not in Ouachita Parish, that doesn't mean you can't serve. 11 parishes. You can see all of that on casaofnela.org, which is our website. Our upcoming training classes in July, I believe, are the 8th and the 10th, but we can also work around your schedule. Like, we want people to get trained, and we do offer some runway. So if you are just interested and you want to get an application, you can do that on our website, or you can give us a call and just begin the process. It doesn't mean that you're committed to a case. It means that you say, I want to begin this process and learn more. Get us an application so that we can get you in for an interview, and we can help you see if this is a good fit for you, all the way through until you take a case. Like, you're not stuck in the system yet. Like, get in, get trained, learn about it. Oftentimes, once you get to training, people follow through because they realize how needed they are. But start the process, and don't be afraid to just get in touch with us and say, all right, let's just see what this looks like. Because it may take you a month to get prepared to even take a case. So,
and that's important as well. We had in our training, like I mentioned, it was a lot of people from our Sunday school class. And there was one lady that went through the training. She's like, I just don't feel confident to be able to take this on. She went through the whole entire process. But then when she started hearing the stories that we were telling, which important to be able to say that once you take on a case, it's confidential.
Sure.
You're not to lay out any of this confidential stuff to other people, but to hear some of the rewarding, fulfilling things that we were able to share, it gave her the confidence and said, you know what, I got to do it. And she made the decision to take on a case months after we all did. And I mean, it's a great outcome for her case as well.
That's great. That's good to hear.
So CASA of NELA is where people can go to find out. There's an application online they can fill out.
There is on our website. It's very easy to get to. It's Become a Volunteer, and then you can click on Fill Out an Application. But you can always get through us. I mean, we've got our phone, 318-398-0945. We can email you an application. On our Facebook page, I would love for people to follow us on Facebook, and I'm going to give you a plug right now because on our Facebook page right now is a video that includes you, Brian.
And I haven't seen it yet.
He
We're going to
hasn't
have to
seen
check
it
it
yet.
out.
Y'all go see it before he does. But Brian and a few of our other volunteers just helped us make a great video that's on our Facebook page right now about becoming a CASA or being a CASA and what that's like. So we're excited about that video. But on our Facebook page, send me a message, and I will respond to you and say, I'll give you an application.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for giving us time today to dive in a little bit. I mean, there's so much that I could sit and talk about the rewards that I have received. And that's a selfish thing on my part. I didn't go in this for me. But I think I'm a changed community member by having a better understanding of what's happening in our community. But more than that is I found out I have the time. I have the time to make it happen, and it is so worth it.
Well, thank you, Brian, for being a CASA.